Hey, welcome back, everyone. I've decided to do a part two of the book intro of The Soul After Death. You can find it on the Internet Archive on Google for free to see the full text and read it when you have time. As you can see here, if you can see it clearly on the screen, it's 152 pages long. So we're just continuing with a bit of an introduction for today. So it's been written by Father Seraphim Rose, who was the American Orthodox monk and theologian who recently was made a saint. Okay, so let's see. So this is the book. I can actually try and increase the size of it. We read through some of the introduction. We looked at the soul after death. We read the preface. And let's flip through. I want to find some more orthodox content for us because, as it was stated in the introduction, they're doing a thorough research on what has been written in modern times by people who have had after death experiences or near death experiences. And so the information that we see, whether it's in media, mainstream, can be very generic. And Father Seraphim Rose is actually bringing forth the Orthodox perspective on this. So if I flip through some pages, we looked at the out-of-body experience. We've looked at that in part one. I'm just flipping through the pages here. The meeting with others, we looked at that many people who had the near-death experiences and came back said that they, would see visions of their loved ones who had passed away, come and greet them or guide them. And let's see. We actually can read chapter 2, the Orthodox Doctrine of Angels now. I just want to get this larger, or I hope you'll be able to see the text. It's actually blurry for me here. Why is it blurry? That's going to be impossible there. See if I make it bigger. No, let's see what's going on. There you go. That's better. All right. Oops. Let's go back. Where does it start? Let's go back. Gee, where have I gone now? Oh, gee, I've gone to page 136. Oh, no, we need to be about page 8, I think. Before. There you go, the outer body. And where does chapter 2 start? Sorry, it's a bit fiddly when you increase the size, and I just want you to be able to see a bit more. I'm looking for chapter 2, which is here. All right. Dare I make it bigger? All right, let's go to one-page view. Sorry about this. Now I'm trying to work out. So let me just find my place. There we go. Okay, this is probably as good as it's going to get, I think. Chapter 2, the Orthodox Doctrine of Angels. We know from the words of Christ himself that the soul is met at death by angels. And it came to pass that the beggar died and that he was carried away by the angels into Abraham's bosom. That's in Luke chapter 16, verse 22. Concerning the form in which angels appear, we know also from the gospel an angel of the Lord whose appearance was as lightning and his raiment white as snow. From Matthew chapter 28, verses 2 and 3. A young man arrayed in a white robe, Mark 16:5. Two men in dazzling apparel, Luke 24:4. Two angels in white, John 20:12. Throughout Christian history, the manifestation of angels have always been in the same form of dazzling youths arrayed in white. The iconographic tradition of the appearance of angels has also been consistent throughout the centuries, depicting just such dazzling youths, often with wings, which of course are a symbolic feature not usually seen in angelic apparitions. And the Seventh Ecumenical Council in 787 decreed that angels should always be portrayed only in this way as men. The Cupids of the Western art of the Renaissance and the latter periods are pagan in inspiration and have nothing to do with true angels. Indeed, not only with regard to the artistic depiction of angels, but in the whole doctrine of spiritual beings, the modern Roman Catholic and Protestant West has gone far astray from the teaching of the scripture and of ancient Christian tradition. An understanding of this error is essential to us if we are to understand the true Christian doctrine of the fate of the soul after death. Bishop Ignatius Brian Cherninov, deceased 1867, one of the great fathers of recent times, noticed this error and devoted a whole volume of his collected works to exposing it and setting forth the true Orthodox doctrine of this subject, found in Volume 3 in the Tuzov edition, St. Petersburg, 1886. In criticizing the views of a standard Roman Catholic theological work of the 19th century, Ab Bergia, Dictionnaire de Theologie, Bishop Ignatius devotes a large part of this volume, with a page reference, to combating the modern idea based on the 17th century philosophy of Descartes, that everything outside the material realm belongs simply to the realm of pure spirit. Such an idea, in effect, places the infinite God on the same level as various finite spirits, angels, demons, souls of the departed. This idea has become extremely widespread today, although those who hold it do not see its full consequences, and accounts for much of the confusion of the contemporary world regarding spiritual things. Great interest is shown in everything that is outside the material world, with little distinction often made between what is divine, angelic, demonic, or simply the result of extraordinary human powers or of the imagination. Okay. Ab Bergia taught that angels, demons, and the souls of the departed are perfectly spiritual, thus they are not subject to laws of time and space. We can speak of their form or movement only as metaphors, and they have need to be clothed in a subtle body whenever God permits them to act on bodies. In brackets, Bishop Ignatius, Volume 3, page reference. Even an otherwise knowledgeable 20th century Roman Catholic work on modern spiritism repeats this teaching, stating, for example, that both angels and demons can borrow the material required for becoming visible to men from a lower nature, either animate or inanimate. And it says Blackmore, Spiritism, Facts and Frauds, page reference. Spiritists and occultists themselves have absorbed these ideas from modern philosophy. One sophisticated apologist for supernatural Christianity, C.S. Lewis, an Anglican, properly criticizes the modern conception of heaven as merely a state of mind, but he still seems himself to be, at least in part caught up in the modern opinion that the body and locality and locomotion and time now feel irrelevant to the highest reaches of the spiritual life. And that was C.S. Lewis, book Miracles, the Macmillan Company, New York, 1967, with a page reference. Such views are the result of an oversimplification of spiritual reality under the influence of modern materialism and owing to a loss of contact with authentic Christian doctrine and spiritual experience. To understand the orthodox doctrine of angels and other spirits, one must first unlearn the oversimplified modern dichotomy of matter-spirit. The truth is more complex than that, and at the same time so simple that those who are still capable of believing it will probably be widely regarded as naive literalists. Bishop Ignatius writes, emphasis added by us, when God opens the spiritual eyes of a man, he's capable of seeing spirits in their own form. Angels, in appearing to men, have always appeared in the form of men. Likewise, from the scripture, it is clear with all apparentness that the human soul has the form of a man in the body, just like the other created spirits. He cites a multitude of patristic sources to prove this point. Let us then look at the patristic teaching for ourselves. Saint Basil the Great, in his book on the Holy Spirit, states that in the heavenly powers, their nature is that of an aerial spirit, if one may so speak of an immaterial fire. For this reason, they are limited by place and become visible, appearing to those who are worthy in the form of their own bodies. Again, we believe that each of the heavenly powers is in a definite place. For the angel who stood before Cornelius was not at the same time with Philip, and that's in Acts chapter 10, verse 3, chapter 8, verse 26. And the angel who spoke with Zechariah near the altar of incense, reference Luke chapter 1, verse 11, did not at the same time occupy his own place in heaven. And we see that in chapter 16, 23, the works of St. Basil, Russian edition of Soikin, St. Petersburg, 1911, with some references. Likewise, St. Gregory the theologian teaches secondary lights after the Trinity, having a royal glory, are the brilliant invisible angels. They freely go around the great throne because they are swiftly moving minds, aflame, and divine spirits which swiftly transport themselves through the air. And that's in homily 6 on the noetic beings in works of St. Gregory the theologian in Russian, Soikin edition, St. Petersburg, with a reference. Thus, angels, while being spirits and a flame of fire, in Psalm 103, verse 5, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 7, the dwelling in a realm where earthly laws of time and space do not hold true, still are limited by time and space and act in such material ways, if one may so speak, that some fathers do not hesitate to refer to the aerial bodies of angels. St. John Damascene, in summing up in the 8th century the teaching of the fathers before him, states, compared with us, the angel is said to be incorporeal and immaterial, although in comparison with God, who alone is incomparable, everything proves to be gross and material, for only the divinity is true immaterial and incorporeal. Again, he teaches the angels are circumscribed because when they are in heaven, they are not on earth. And when they are sent to earth by God, they do not remain in heaven. However, they are not confined by walls or doors or bars or seals because they are unbounded. I say that they are unbounded because they do not appear exactly as they are to the just and to them to whom God wills them to appear. On the contrary, They appear under such a different form as can be seen by those who behold them. And that's found in the Exact Exposition of the Orthodox Faith, Volume 2, and then it says 3 in the Fathers of the Church, New York, 1958, with references. In saying that angels do not appear exactly as they are, Saint Damascene does not, of course, contradict Saint Basil, who teaches that angels appear in the form of their own bodies. Both of these statements are true, as may be clearly seen in numerous manifestations of angels in the Old Testament. Thus, the archangel Raphael was the traveling companion of Tobias for many weeks without it once being suspected that he was not a man. Yet when the archangel revealed himself in the end, he said, "All these days I was visible to you, but I did not eat and drink, but it only seemed thus to you." That's in Tobit, reference 12:19. The three angels who appeared to Abraham also gave the appearance of eating and were thought to be men in Genesis chapters 18 and 19. Likewise, Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, in his catechetical lectures, instructs us concerning the angel who appeared to Daniel, that Daniel, at the sight of Gabriel, shuddered and fell on his face, and, prophet as he was, dared not answer him until the angel transformed himself into the likeness of a son of man. Found in the catechetical lectures, Erdmann's Nicene and Post-Nicene Fathers, particular volumes. Yet in the book of Daniel, in chapter 10, we read that even in his first dazzling appearance, the angel was also in the form of a man, only with such brightness, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, as not to be endured by human eyes. Thus, the appearance of an angel is the same as the appearance of a man, but because the angelic body is not material, and the very sight of its fiery, shining appearance is enough to dumbfound any man still in the flesh, angelic apparitions must of necessity be adapted to the human viewers of them, appearing as less shining and awe-inspiring than they are in reality. With regard to the human soul also, Blessed Augustine teaches that when the soul is separated from the body, the man himself who is in such a state, though it be in spirit only, not in body, yet sees himself so like to his own body that he cannot discern any difference whatever. That's in City of God, particular reference in New York, 1955, printed in New York. This truth has now been amply confirmed in the personal experiences of perhaps thousands of resuscitated people in our times. But if we speak of the bodies of angels and other spirits, we must be careful not to ascribe any crudely material characteristics to them. Ultimately, St. John Damascene teaches the form and definition of this substance only the Creator understands. That's in Exact Exposition, with a page reference. In the West, Blessed Augustine wrote that it is all the same whether we prefer to speak of the aerial bodies of demons and other spirits or simply call them bodiless. That's in City of God with a reference. Bishop Ignatius himself was perhaps a little too interested in explaining the bodies of angels in terms of the 19th century scientific knowledge of gases. For this reason, a minor dispute arose between him and Bishop Theophan, the recluse, who thought it necessary to emphasize the uncompounded nature of spirits, who of course are not composed of elemental molecules, as are all gases. On the basic point, however, the subtle covering which all spirits possess, he was in agreement with Bishop Ignatius. See Father George's Florovsky, Ways of Russian Theology in Russian, printed in Paris with references. Perhaps some similar misunderstanding on a secondary point or question of terminology was responsible for the opposition which arose in the West in the 5th century, when the Latin father, Saint Faustus of Lerins, taught this same doctrine of the relative materiality of the soul, based on the teaching of the Eastern fathers. If the precise definition of the angelic nature is known to God alone, an understanding of angelic activity, at least in this world, is accessible to everyone, for of this there are many testimonies, both in scripture and in patristic writings, as well as in the lives of saints. To fully understand the manifestations that occur to the dying, we shall have to know, in particular, how the fallen angels or demons appear. True angels always appear in their own forms, only less dazzling than they are in reality, and they act solely in order to carry out the will and commandments of God. Fallen angels, on the other hand, although they appear sometimes in their own form, which Saint Seraphim of Sarov described from his own experience as hideous, usually assume various appearances and perform numerous miracles with the powers they have in submission to the prince of the power of the air, and that's in Ephesians 2:2. Their special habitat is the air, and their chief function is to tempt or frighten men and thus drag them to the perdition with themselves. It is against them that the struggle of the Christian is directed. Our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness under the heavens. That's in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Blessed Augustine, in his little-known treatise, The Divination of Demons, written when he was asked to explain some of the many demonic manifestations of the ancient pagan world, gives a good general view of the activities of demons. The nature of demons is such that, through the sense perception belonging to the aerial body, they readily surpass the perception possessed by earthly bodies, and in speed too. Because of the superior mobility of the aerial body, they incomparably excel not only the movements of men and of beasts, but even the flight of birds. Endowed with these two faculties, insofar as they are the properties of the aerial body, namely with keenness of perception and speed of movement, they foretell and declare many things that they have recognized far in advance. At this, because of the sluggishness of earthly perception, men wonder. The demons, too, through the long period into which their life is extended, have gained a far greater experience in events than accrues to men because of the brief span of their lives. Through these faculties, which the nature of the aerial body has allotted, demons not only foretell many things that will occur, but also perform many miraculous acts. That's found in The Divination of Demons, chapter 3, in the Fathers of the Church, volume 27, page 426. Many of the miracles and spectacles of the demons are described in the long discourse of St. Anthony the Great, contained in St. Athanasius's Life of him. Here also the lighter bodies of the demons are mentioned, and there's a reference there in Eastern Orthodox books, printed 1976. The Life of Saint Cyprian, the former sorcerer, also contains numerous descriptions of demonic transformations and miracles as related by an actual participant in them. There it says, see the Orthodox Word, printed in 1976, number 5. A classic description of demonic activity is contained in the 7th and 8th conferences of Saint John Cassian, the great 5th century father of Gaul, who first transmitted the full teaching of Eastern monasticism in the West. Saint Cassian writes, such a multitude of evil spirits fills this air, which is spread out between heaven and earth, and in which they fly in disturbance and not idly, that the divine providence for our benefit has hidden and removed them from the gaze of men. Otherwise, from fear of their attack, or of the frightful spectacle of the faces into which they are transformed and changed by their own will. Whenever they wish, men would be struck with unbearable terror and ready for collapse. And of the fact that the unclean spirits are governed by the more evil powers and are subject to them, we are instructed not only by the witness of the Holy Scripture, which we read in the description of the Lord's reply to the Pharisees who slandered him. If I cast out demons by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that's in Matthew chapter 12, verse 27, but also by clear visions and many experiences of saints. When one of our brethren was traveling in this desert, having found a certain cave after nightfall, he stopped there and wished to perform the evening prayer in it. While he was singing the psalms according to custom, the time passed and it was already after midnight. After finishing the rule of prayer, desiring to rest his exhausted body a little, he lay down and suddenly began to see innumerable hordes of demons coming together from all directions. Coming in an endless file and a very long row, some preceded their chief, while others followed him. Finally came the prince, who was both taller than all in size and more frightful in appearance. After a throne had been placed, he sat down upon an elevated tribunal and with careful investigation began to examine the activity of each one. Those who said that they had not yet been able to seduce their antagonists, he ordered to be banished from his sight with reproof and abuse as inactive and careless, reproaching them with a roar of rage that they had wasted so much time and labor for nothing. But those who declared that they had seduced those assigned to them, he let go with great honors to the enthusiasm and acclaim of all, as most courageous warriors, glorified as an example for all. One most evil spirit from among their number stepped forth and reported with evil joy, as of an illustrious victory, that he had finally conquered a well-known monk, whose name he gave after 15 years of ceaselessly tempting him, having enticed him with his very night into fornication. At this report, there was extraordinary hilarity among everyone, and he departed, exalted by the high praises of the Prince of Darkness and crowned with glory. With the approach of dawn, all this multitude of demons vanished from sight. Later, the brother who witnessed this spectacle learned that the report of the fallen monk was indeed true. That's found in Conferences, a certain reference, Russian translation of Bishop Peter from Moscow, 1892. Such experiences have occurred to Orthodox Christians right down to the present century. They are clearly not dreams or visions, but waking experiences of the demons as they are in themselves, but only, of course, after one's spiritual eyes have been opened to see these beings who are normally invisible to human eyes. Until quite recently, it was perhaps only a few old-fashioned or simple-minded Orthodox Christians who could still believe in the literal truth of such accounts. Even now, some Orthodox find them hard to accept. So pervasive has been the modern belief that angels and demons are pure spirits and do not act in such material ways. Only with the greatly increased demonic activity of recent years do these accounts once again begin to seem at least plausible. Now also the widespread of after-death experiences have opened up the realm of non-material reality to many ordinary people who have had no contact with the occult, and a coherent and true explanation of this realm and its beings has become one of the needs of the times. Only Orthodox Christianity can supply this explanation, having preserved the authentic Christian doctrine to our own days. Now, let us see more specifically how angels and demons appear at the moment of death. Chapter 3, Appearances of Angels and Demons at the Hour of Death. Let's see if we're going to read that. We'll read a little bit. In these experiences, the newly deceased is usually met by two angels. This is how the author of Unbelievable for Many describes them. Hardly had the old nurse uttered these words, "May he inherit the kingdom of heaven," than two angels appeared at my side. For some reason, in one of them I recognized my guardian angel, but the other was unknown to me. Later, a pious wanderer told him that this was the meeting angel, Saint Theodora, whose journey after death through the aerial toll houses is related in the life of Saint Basil the New, 10th century, March 26, related that when I was at the end of my strength, I suddenly saw two radiant angels of God who were like splendid youths of inexpressible beauty. Their faces were brighter than the sun. Their gaze was full of love. The hair of their head was white like snow. Around their head, a golden radiance was poured out. Their garments glistened like lightning and were girded about the chest with golden sashes in cross form. It says, see translation in Eternal Mysteries Beyond the Grave. The 6th century bishop of Gaul, Saint Salvius, thus describes his own death experience. When my cell shook 4 days ago and you saw me lying dead, I was raised up by two angels and carried to the highest peak of heaven. That's Saint Gregory of Tours, History of the Franks, and there's a reference there. It was in the Orthodox Word, printed in 1977, number 5. The mission of these angels is to take the soul of the newly reposed on its journey into the afterlife. There is nothing vague about them, either in appearance or action. Having a human appearance, they firmly grasp the subtle body of the soul and conduct it away. The light-bearing angels immediately took my soul in their arms. That's in Saint Theodora in Eternal Mysteries, page 71. Having taken me by the arms, the angels carried me right through the wall of the ward. There's a reference. Saint Salvius was raised up by two angels. Such examples could be multiplied. It cannot be asserted, therefore, that the being of light in today's experiences, who has no visible form, who does not conduct the soul anywhere, who stops to engage the soul in dialogue and shows flashbacks of one's past life, is a guiding angel of the afterlife. Not every being that appears as an angel is such, in fact, for even Satan fashioneth himself into an angel of light. And that's in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. And so these beings, without even the appearance of angels, can certainly not be identified as such. Unmistakable encounters with angels seem almost never to occur in today's after-death experiences, for a reason we shall attempt to explain below. It is possible then that the being of light is actually a demon masquerading as a formless angel of light in order to tempt the dying, even at the moment when the soul is leaving the body. Dr. Moody, Life After Life, in a book called Reflections, and other investigators actually raised this question only to dismiss the possibility as not in harmony with the good results the apparition produces in the dying. To be sure, the views of evil of such investigators are naive in the extreme. Dr. Moody thinks that Satan would presumably tell his servants to follow a course of hate and destruction. That's in a reference, Life After Life, and seems to be totally unaware of the Christian literature, which describes the actual nature of demonic temptations, which invariably are presented to their victims as something good. What then is the Orthodox teaching about demonic temptations at the hour of death? St. Basil the Great, in his interpretation of the words of the psalm, "Save me from them that persecute me, and do thou deliver me, lest at any time, like a lion, he seize my soul." That's in Psalm 7, verses 1 and 2. Offers this explanation. I think that the noble athletes of God who have wrestled considerably with the invisible enemies during the whole of their lives, after they have escaped all of their persecutions and reached the end of their life, are examined by the prince of this world, in order that if they are found to have wounds from wrestling of any stains or effects of sin, they may be detained. But if they are found unwounded and sinless, they may be brought by Christ into their rest as being unconquered and free. Therefore, the prophet prays both for his life here and for his future life. Here he says, "Save me from them that persecute me, and there at the time of trial. Deliver me, lest at any time, like a lion, he seize my soul." And this you can learn from the Lord himself, who before his suffering said, "Now the prince of this world cometh, and he hath nothing in me," in John 14:30. St. Basil, Exegetic Homilies, Catholic University American Press reference. Indeed, it is not only Christian strugglers who have to face the testing by demons at the hour of death. St. John Chrysostom, in his homilies on the Gospel of St. Matthew, vividly describes what often happens to ordinary sinners at their death. Most persons may be then heard relating horrors and fearful visions, the spectacle of which the dying are unable to endure, but often shake their very bed with great power, gaze fearfully on the bystanders, the soul urging itself inwards, unwilling to be torn away from the body and unable to bear the sight of the approaching angels. If human beings that are frightful strike terror into us beholding them, when we see angels threatening and stern powers among our visitors, what shall we not suffer? The soul being forced from the body and dragged away and bewailing much, all in vain? That's a homily 53 on St. Matthew, Nicene and post-Nicene Fathers, printed in 1973. The Orthodox lives of saints have numerous accounts of such demonic spectacles which appear at the moment of death, usually with the aim of frightening the dying person and making him despair over his salvation. St. Gregory, in his dialogues, for example, tells of a certain rich man who was a slave to numerous passions. A short time before he died, he saw hideous spirits standing before him, threatening fiercely to carry him to the depths of hell. The entire family gathered around, weeping and lamenting. Though they could not actually see the evil spirits and their horrible attacks, they could tell from the sick man's own declarations, from the pallor on his face, and from this trembling body, that the evil spirits were present. In mortal terror of these horrible images, he kept tossing from side to side on his bed, and now, nearly worn out and despairing of any relief, he shouted, "Give me time until morning. Hold off at least until morning." With that, his life was snatched away. That's found in Dialogues reference. St. Gregory reports other similar incidents, as does Bede in his History of the English Church and People. With a reference, Even in 19th century America, such experiences were not at all uncommon. A recent anthology contains numerous 19th century deathbed visions of unrepentant sinners with such titles as I am in the flames, pull me out, oh save me. They drag me down, I'm going to hell, and the evil is coming to drag my soul down to hell. And that's in a book by John Myers, Voices from the Edge of Eternity, printed in 1973. All right, let's just have another browse of this book. Again, it's available on the Internet Archive. You type in Father Seraphim Rose, The Soul After Death, which was printed in 2009. And again, this is a Orthodox perspective, and it's looking at contemporary views or looking at modern views, whichever way you want to state that, and comparing it to the Orthodox view. So chapter 4, the contemporary experience of heaven. Okay, that's another interesting chapter. Let's go to a 2-page view. All right, so as you can see, it's an interesting book and it's going to take some time to read it. And we're just doing a brief overview here. Let's just see if there's any other key. You probably can't see this, is very tiny to there. Yeah, it's very hard to show you the text clearly on this as well. Anyway, I hope this gives you an idea of some of the free Christian material available. There's a lot to study, as you can see. And I hope you continue to strive in your Christian experience and that you pray often, because as we can see that even in what we've read here, even at death, at actual death, the devil is still trying to win people's souls so that they miss out on eternal salvation. So it's a real eye-opener that we should always be aware of what is going on around us and to try and keep God's commandments. And the first commandment was to love God with all your ability, and the second main commandment to also love your neighbors as yourself. All right, that's all we've got for tonight. So hopefully that was a little bit more interesting. Okay.